We want to believe that love will last forever, and perhaps it does. Yet, as imperfect humans, we sometimes let others down, and even ourselves, in ways that sever the trust that is so necessary for lasting healthy relationships. When we experience the deep pain of betrayal, which can cause immense psychological damage, it can be tough to grieve, heal, and move forward. Betrayal comes in many forms, including sexual infidelity, emotional affairs, and financial deception, yet all involve dishonesty and a lack of integrity. When we turn inward to gently embrace faith, love, and courage, we can find much needed inner peace and restorative balance. The gift of self-reflection doesn't take away the pain of betrayal, but it can create a wondrous internal transformation that fosters healing and strength. Today, our special guest, who is renowned for offering gentle wisdom in a complicated world, will guide us as we focus on this listener's real-life question. I discovered that my partner cheated on me. I first suspected that it was emotional infidelity, which was bad enough, but now it's clear that it had moved to a physical affair. I've always trusted my husband and thought he had integrity, but I'm so shattered that I want a divorce. He wants to try to save things, but I can't get past my anger and mistrust. Am I wrong to want to end the marriage? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
We want to believe that love will last forever, and perhaps it does. Yet, as imperfect humans, we sometimes let down others and even ourselves in ways that sever the trust that is so necessary for lasting healthy relationships. When we experience the deep pain of betrayal, which can cause immense psychological damage, it can be tough to grieve, heal, and move forward. When we embrace faith, love, and courage, we can often find the much needed inner peace and restorative balance that we so desperately need to feel like ourselves again. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real-life question. I discovered that my partner cheated on me. I first suspected it was emotional infidelity, and that was bad enough. But it's now clear that it had moved to an actual physical affair. I've always trusted him and thought he had integrity, but I'm so shattered that I want a divorce. He wants to try to save things, but I can't get past my anger and mistrust. Am I wrong to want to end the marriage? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Noah benShea, who will be sharing his expertise on love and elevating the human spirit. Noah is an author, poet, scholar, theologian, and so much more. And one of my favorite quotes of his is this: of all the things you can make in life, make a difference. And so with that very modest introduction, welcome to the podcast, Noah. There is so much that I am about you, and I'm just delighted to have you on the podcast and know that our listeners will enjoy your honesty, your genuineness, and your wisdom.
Thank you. I'd say I'm very humbled to be here and honored, but I'm reminded by Golda Meir, who said also, "Don't be so humble, you're not that great." So I want to keep my hubris at bay, but also my humility. It's very nice to be here and to be an ally in your good work.
Thank you. And I'm so grateful. And I just want to read, just so our listeners know a tad bit more about you. Because of your humility, you might not say some of the other really important things about who you are. But Noah is one of North America's most respected and beloved poet philosophers. He is a Pulitzer Prize nominated international best-selling author of 28 books translated into 18 languages. Noah is a scholar and a theologian. He has spoken to numerous prestigious university institutions, including the Library of Congress, the U.S. Department of Defense, and he's been published by Oxford University Press and the World Bible Society in Jerusalem. He was, believe this or not, the dean at UCLA at the age of 22, and at 30, he was a fellow at several esteemed think tanks. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I do want to also say I love this one quote. This is by Howard Schultz, who's the executive chairman of Starbucks. Noah benShea has elevated the human spirit to great heights with his wisdom. And that pithy yet beautiful quote says so much about you. And also, before I ask you a little bit about you, I want our listeners to know that our guest today wrote a beautiful book called Jacob the Baker, and that was written many years ago, but it's now in film form. And I just watched the film this past weekend and was so delighted about so many aspects of the film. And that film is now nominated for a very wonderful award. And now, Noah, I'm going to turn it over to you so that we can know a little bit more about that film before we launch into responding to our listeners' question.
Let me, if I might, I was an assistant dean of students at UCLA at the age of 22. So let me begin by my friend Ramdas across that time said to us that nobody ever became somebody who didn't first become nobody. So let me just calm down that and hold myself with some perspective there. Jacob the Baker is an important spiritual and dramatic film, full feature film, now streaming on Amazon Prime and Tubi and Vudu and in Vimeo up in Canada. After many, many years and many people wanting to make Jacob the Baker into a motion picture, Julia Roberts was walking around the set of Pretty Woman, quoting Jacob to the people on the cast. I decided to move forward, and so I actually am the producer of this film, along with Stephen Rails, who does all of Wes Anderson's films and done the great Grand Budapest Hotel. And a colleague in this film was Mark Johnson, who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. They were both producing allies. Deepak Chopra has said very kind words about this film, about my work across time. I think the motion picture mostly is just a profoundly authentic film, and I invite people to take a look at it. Jacob the Baker, I'll leave it at that. Jacob the Baker, now streaming on Amazon Prime and Tubi and Vudu. Take a look, folks. I think you'll find something special in the film, and I hope you'll meet a friend named Jacob the Baker in the motion picture. And we just nominated we're at the Illuminate Film Festival and an award as one of the premier films on this that everybody's kind of excited about. So, and that's February, I have April 7th in Santa Barbara, the Illuminate Film Festival. Come see Jacob the Baker.
I am so excited about your film and for the nomination, because in watching the film, it's what made me know even more that you're a great fit for this listener's question, because you focus in Jacob the Baker on some of the key concepts of my life and my work, and probably the questions that this individual is pondering, right? The importance of love, the importance of authenticity, integrity, and respect in our lives, as well as the importance of acts of kindness. And so when we look at this listener's question and the pain, I know we can't answer and tell the listener what to do, but we can look and be with her in this really difficult time and maybe illuminate some concepts that will help her make a wise decision, as well as helping our listeners who may be struggling with similar issues or had similar issues in the past that they're still not recovered from, or an issue around the corner that they don't know they'll be facing.
I think that's exactly what we can do. First, by realizing that in every anguish, with enough time and enough distance, is our anguish. And if we when we shot the film, we shot it around the world in the middle of COVID, and all the stories, and fidelity becomes one of the essential stories that we're exploring in Jacob the Baker, along with parenting and faith and economic pressures and a lot of the keen stuff. One thing I'm going to step back and say for a second about this issue about love is we live in a world now where everybody so often is in political silos and either right or left or blue or red. Not only in the United States but globally, the same kind of things happening. But what's important to know is that the issues of love in your life really don't care who you voted for. They don't care what you call yourself. Love is an equal, and the loss of love or the challenges of love is an equal opportunity employer. It'll come into your life no matter who you think is right and who you think is wrong. And so, in my perspective, with this person's anxiousness about this moment in her life, and entirely right to be that way, because if this is happening and you're not emotionally stirred, then that's what's wrong with you. Because sometimes the only thing more than what's bothering you is what isn't bothering you and how you respond to it. So, in my own take, we all talk about that love without honesty is betrayal. But the flip side of that is that honesty without love is brutality. So it's important that this woman be able to really, this woman, but in a sense, she's an archetype of a lot of us in this world, is that when we have to deal with somebody where we feel a sense of betrayal, that we have to be able to express our honesty about it without necessarily expressing our anger about it. Can you be loving and tell somebody how they have so disappointed you? So at the end of the conversation, not that they feel good about you, but that you feel good about you. That is, you can't be in a love relationship unless you're in a love relationship with yourself. So in dealing with anybody who has disappointed you, you have to make sure that you're not abandoning your own love of yourself and how you conduct yourself in the middle of it. That's the only, when you wake up in the morning, you're not in charge of what gets delivered to your door. You are in charge of your response. And the important thing is to respond, not react. So to this woman, I might say, please pause for a second and ask yourself if you're in a reaction syndrome. A reaction syndrome is like watching a pool ball on a pool table gets hit by another ball. It banks off one wall and another and is sunk. It never made a decision. It just was in a reaction syndrome the whole time. That's a terrible way to live one's life. So to both be responsive rather than reactive, and to come to this questions that she's facing with the love for herself and be able to express that love. It's tough to do. The easy road isn't always the wise road. It isn't always the most direct path. Sometimes it's in the struggle. There is this a very famous in psychology in the middle of the 20th century, which seems ancient now. In the middle of the 20th century, somebody said there's only two issues in life, and it's love and work. And how you resonate with love and work, by that you define who you are. So if you know somebody who's got both love and work and it's working for them, then they're pretty good. If you take one of those away, you're like Peg Leg Pete. You're absent, and it's easy to without work or without love. Jacob the Baker says there is only work and love in life. If you're fortunate, you love your work. If you're wise, you'll work at love.
Thank you for saying that, because the part about working at love is a piece that so many people miss. They think that love should be easy, that the journey of love is all, fairy tales and princesses and Prince Charmings, and it's not. Love asks us to dig in.
If you want to fuel passion, you have to chop wood.
I like that. So, when we look at our listener's question, and it goes back to something you just said, when I'm working with clients, I often will say, depending upon the situation, I'll say, ask yourself, what would love do here? Because I can't answer their questions for them. I can lead them, I can light the way. And
Mhm.
as you said earlier on, that for the person who was betrayed, diving inward to say, what is love for myself asking me to do here? Yes, love for the other, but also we must love the self and come from a place. So if she's feeling that she's really broken and shattered, as you said, pause. We don't want to react. We want to respond, which means we're coming from a place of, yes, pain. When we're betrayed, we feel deeply pained, very confused, loss of focus, all those things. Yet if we take time to slow down, to recalibrate, then we can work on loving ourselves and asking the self, what would love do? What would my self love do here?
To this, I always like when you take something at a metaphysical level and move it into a physical level. In Japan, oftentimes when one finds himself with a vase that they cherish that has been broken, they will repair it with gold.
Yes.
So at the end, the broken vase is now even more valuable for having
Yes.
been broken. It's a very tough position to come to, and I remember some one time a long time ago when I felt I was in a very hard work situation, and somebody said to me, "Well, it's character. You're just building character." I said, I've been building enough character for a while. I've got enough character, so we don't look to these experiences. But it's important to know that every moment it's a portal to another moment. So and how you go through that door is what matters. There's just again things happen that you're not in charge of, but um, it is a time to look and reflect, and maybe for this person to think about. I remember talking to a therapist once who said, I met a woman who told me she had to be divorced from this guy, and she asked why. She says, because the way he takes the clothes out of the dryer. And
Hmm.
in psychologists, they say the thing is never the thing. So a lot of times the thing is never the thing is what you think is driving you crazy about somebody else really is just reflecting on what drives you crazy. And you have to stop and realize that it's not the issue at hand. There was a movie a long time ago where one of the key lines was never underestimate the power of denial. And when people hear that, their first thought was that yes, that you can be in denial about anything. The real power in denial is what you bury under the carpet becomes volcanic. So by the denial, it becomes volcanic, not just what you're denying is reality. So I would suggest that this person, as much as she might be looking at her husband, use this time as an opportunity to be a mirror on herself. And a lot of times, it's important for us to remember that a window is also a mirror because it allows us to look at the world and see ourselves.
Okay, Noah, that's a lot. Let me slow it down for me and for our listeners. So I love that you brought up the Japanese method of taking pottery and mending it with gold. If I recall correctly, it's something like kintsugi, something like that. And I saw that in a sense when I was in India, where I was just amazed. But they took pottery that had come over from China thousands of years ago and used it to create these beautiful buildings, the mosaics on the outside of the buildings. They didn't let it go to waste. So if we take that to what the listener is struggling with, and I'm not losing sight of the idea of the mirror as well. I want to dive into that. But what you are saying, if I'm hearing you right, is wait, wait, listener, slow down. Just see what is, whether you stay or don't stay. There is some shattering here, some shattering of your heart, some shattering of your life. And put it together wisely. Use gold, not literal gold to put it together, but the gold of your spirit, the gold of your kindness, the gold of your self love, so that whatever you decide to create out of this brokenness can become beautiful. Did I get that right?
You asked me to slow down. I've been thinking about these things for a long time, and so it isn't. My wife one time was talking to a friend, and he said, "I just had this very philosophical conversation with Noah," and she said, "That's the only conversation he has." So let me. That is my two thoughts in response to what you were saying, if I might. Many years ago, I was chosen for a State Department to India a long time ago, and I was there. I turned 21 in Calcutta, and I was on a train, and they came in when they served you tea. They served tea on the train. This is many years ago, in a little in a ceramic cup, and they served it. And when you were done with it, you wondered what you did with it. They said, just throw it out the window. And I said, just throw this cup out the window. They said, yes. I said, it'll break. They said, yes. And I said, why? They said, when the train pulls away, there are people who walk down the track picking up all these pieces of broken low fire clay and put it in a pot, add water, mix it together again, and it's another pot, it's another cup by the end of the afternoon. That's one thing about how you transform something is about how is it transforming you, and to understand that the only state we live in is a state of transformazione, in a state of transformation. That's the only state that you live in. Einstein said energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. So this is Noah via Einstein. So you can only be in a state of transformation. When you talked about the gold, I had this thought from many years ago that the golden rule is fool's gold if you're prepared to treat others with the same disrespect you have for yourself. Right? We say treat others as you would want to be treated. That's the golden rule. As long as you're not prepared to treat others with the same disrespect you have for yourself. So I think again, let's circle back to our friend's question, if I might presume to be a friend, to our friend's question, and realize that this moment in your life is as much about how you are treating you as someone else treated you. Right? That's where the moment is in its major transformation for you. You're not finally in charge of what this man did. You are in charge of who you are in this moment, how you react, and how are you going through this transformation. Because trust me, if this will not be the last transformation in your life, my dear. Whoever this person is asking this question, this will not be the last major transformation in your life. And if you doubt that for a moment, let me introduce you to getting old.
And so I hear the deep compassion and wisdom and empathy that you have for our listener. And it seems, inviting her to really slow down again and listen and dive within and say, okay, we keep talking about gold, and we think about in alchemy, where the science of alchemy, where we turn lead into gold, and that this is that opportunity. And it's hard when you're in the pain. It's hard. I've been betrayed. I get it. It's hard to be in that place of deep pain and say, yeah, Noah, and you're asking me to transform. All I want to do is cry and be a lump on the floor. How, Noah, can I transform into a place of loving myself when all I can think of right now is that I trusted this person and they betrayed me?
So to keep it in perspective, they did. That's their business. That's their karma. That's what they have to drag to this world. To vary from gold, but no less of value, we have to remember that a piece of coal, and a lot of us who don't think we're very important might just think we've been treated like a piece of coal, that a piece of coal under enough pressure for a long enough time becomes a diamond. So that if you're thinking that what has happened to you can't be anything but negative, I want to remind you that that some of the most transforming experiences in our life are not experiences that we come to and feel positive about at the time. They're just look. The average child will fall 300 times before they learn to walk. Nobody ever learned to walk who didn't learn to fall. And that falling is not failing. Falling is not failing. It is the human experience, and it doesn't reflect that we are frail. What it does reflect is that we are brothers and sisters, because we all fall, because we're all frail, because we're all human. So in this experience that this, again, thank you to this listener who wrote this question to you, because she has invited us into this conversation, which will be transforming for a number of us, I hope, who, even in myself and listening to myself, to remind myself about the transformation, the alchemy that is part of day-to-day living, if you don't forget what it is to be born again. And I want to just share this with you. One time I had some dear friends who lost a child, and I was standing at the grave with them. And one of the sisters of the family who had lost a child, she said to me, "Noah, do you believe in reincarnation?" I said, "I do. I just don't think you have to die to be reincarnated." So I think this becomes a very incredibly rich opportunity moment for this person to use this betrayal as an opportunity for reincarnation, and to remember yourself. You don't have to die to be reincarnated. And trust me, this in a long life, there are many lives, right? In a long life, there are many lives. So goodbye, hello. Beatles song, you say goodbye, I say hello, hello, hello. You say goodbye, I say hello. I think that's about as wise as I get in the moment. Is
Wow, I do have to say, I love that part. I never thought about reincarnation as a part of being alive. And that's so beautifully put, because it makes sense. You're saying, and through that lens, I can see how I've certainly reincarnated several times in this lifetime. And each version has been, thankfully and mercifully, a better one than the one before, one I'm prouder of and more in love with. And so you're saying to our listener, if I hear you right, listener, friend, stay the course, turn inward, self-reflect, pause, and allow this to be the reincarnation of the next best version of you.
that's the only dance you're invited to in this lifetime.
Wow, I love this. So I want to go for a minute to something that's in Jacob the Baker that just, I don't normally take notes when I'm watching a film, but I did find myself compelled to take notes. And one of the things I love many things, but there is a piece where you were talking about how it is important to know the difference between honesty and integrity. And those are two of my favorite words, and I try hard to live by them. Could you explain to us, to all of us, what the difference is between honesty and integrity? Because some people might pass it by quite quickly.
I, I think there is some congruency between honesty and integrity, but with this pause. Honesty is the relationship you have with others. Integrity is your relationship with yourself. That's what I put it in. I was born into a blue collar family, and you could be wise around the dining room table, but you better not be long winded, otherwise you'd get a fork in the wrist. So my attitude, that combined with a lot of time spent in Eastern consciousness, was to try and find peace and quiet and brevity. So I think that's the difference. Honesty is your relationship with others. Integrity is your relationship with yourself. And let me add this to this: if you are dishonest to yourself, if you are dishonest personally, you will be dishonest socially. That just goes. That's a road sign on the journey. If you are dishonest with yourself, you will be dishonest to others, because you'll need to support that dishonesty with the public, however it is. And none of us have lived long enough who haven't, with integrity, come to witness that. We've all seen that. So I think, and in the film, someone asked me, because part of the film is I step onto the stage and as Jacob the Baker for a one-man evening, and they said, you have no script. You're doing this without a script, and you're talking for an hour and a half on a stage. And they said, "How do you?" I said, "Well, I'm not. If I'm not speaking, you know, try to speak into a character that they see. I'm trying to speak into the character I am. So if I'm being honest with myself, if I'm in a state of integrity with myself, how can I forget my lines?
Absolutely.
If you're in a state of integrity with yourself, you don't have to worry about who else. Who else? There's then you can't forget your lines in this lifetime. But if you're playing to an audience, then you better remember your lines. But if you're in a state of integrity, if you're a state of honesty within yourself, then it's a state of integrity, and you don't need someone whispering your lines. Say this now.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And I've seen that in life, that people who live with integrity, they don't have to worry about which story they're telling because their story is always the truth. They don't worry about being asked questions because there are no lies to cover up. They don't worry about having an open and honest conversation or somebody throwing, well, could you answer this question? Could you tell me about this? They're not afraid because they're living in a state of constant integrity.
I share this with you. I had my director and co-producer were also co-authors on the film, and they were fabulous, and the script was great. But in many circumstances in the film, I also spoke without script. And in particular, part of the film turns on this reporter coming to interview me before my evening on stage. And At one point, and I know that I discover that she's going through a difficult time. And I began to speak to her about how when I came home as a child, and my mother would be waiting up for me, and she was wearing this old house dress and had her hair in curlers. And as I began to remember how much I cherished my mother's just being there for me, I grew very misty-eyed in the film. And we finished that thing, and the director said, "Cut." He says, "That was great, man. That was great." He says, "Okay, now let's do it from this angle." I said, "No." He said, "You get to say some things when you're the producer." I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because if I do it again, I'll be acting." And that's what I really wanted in the film. I appreciated when you said you felt the authenticity in the film and the honesty in the film. And for me, that was the sine qua non. That this honesty was required, and the authenticity was required. Otherwise, you know, I'm a guy selling snake oil. I just want to. I'm prepared to be rejected. I'm just not prepared to be less than the best self that I can bring to the conversation.
And I think that that is such a beautiful benchmark for all of us to aspire to be our best our best authentic selves, imperfect selves in any given moment. And when we look at what the listener wrote in about, where her partner clearly was not his best self, he did something that was not his best self. He made a choice or choices that took him into an area that made, has some big consequences, and that lack of integrity. And so now we're looking at, your quote, honesty without love is brutality. And his lack of honesty, his lack of love ends up having brutal consequences for her. But now she gets to dive in, if I'm following all of this correctly, she gets to dive inward and say, okay, I want to find my integrity here, my honesty, my truth. And I
To
want to
myself, to
Hmm?
myself, to myself.
Yes, to myself, whatever that might look like for her. And I think that it sounds simple, Noah, yet when we're in that dark place, that, dark night of the soul,
Yeah,
of finding that, I believe that that is where, if we're willing to do that work, that's where we grow our internal strength and our roots that allow for that next reincarnation.
absolutely. If she, if this makes her feel that that she thought she was in a relationship and now she feels absent of a relationship, she's wrong. She's not absent of a relationship. She's in a relationship now with herself. This is the relationship she's in, and has to be the anybody who, if you don't, if you have to come home to you before you can go out and visit anyone else. That's when she comes home at the end of the day. Hello, hello, right? You have to have that, be in that company with herself, and that may not be easy. And her husband's choice, was it wrong? It may have been right for him because he has to go through this anguish before he gets to his better place. But that's his work. None of us can do the work of another in this lifetime.
No,
You know,
we
I,
can't.
I tell people that in this life, your work isn't what you do, but who you are. Your work in this life isn't, you go to a party, they say, what do you do? Right? It isn't, my work in this life isn't what I do. My work in this life is who I am. That's your work.
Absolutely. I'm only going to mention this once, but it's, my most recent book, The Joy of Imperfect Love. People ask me, why do I start with the self? Because it builds. The book builds from self-love to relationship love, whatever kind of relationship, friendship, romantic love, because that's what I believe. I believe that we have this being, this self, and it's kind of rough, right? And that we get to work on polishing the stone of who we are again and again and again throughout this lifetime, and that we are in charge of whether we choose to let it be rough and jagged, or whether we keep doing the work to evolve and to continually polish the stone of who we are. And it sounds very much as if that's what you're saying to our listener. Again, your husband, he can be a jagged rock. He has his own journey, but let's come back to you, dear friend, dear listener, and help
Sure.
you polish.
Well, let me shift metaphors again, because this is the work of a poet in the poet philosopher self-description. Uh, you ask any architect, and he will tell you that when you build the foundation, you determine the height of the building. So if you're trying to make or witness the tower that your life might yet be, work on the foundation. Work on the foundation. Work at what's inside of you. Inside of you. No tree ever grew blossom that didn't first grow roots. Right? This is just like sometimes, it's not the philosopher's job to make simple things complicated, but complicated things simple.
Mm.
So, and that's what I would suggest, that however, what you were trying to build of you in your lifetime, make sure you start by working on your foundation. And I think this becomes, the the Chinese word for crisis is made up of two other characters. One is danger, and the other is opportunity. So every crisis you encounter is a dangerous opportunity. So is there danger for this questioner if we keep coming back? And thank you for being, I'm sorry for the circumstance. Thank you for being the spur to this conversation. Is there danger in this circumstance? Yes. Is the danger that you're going to be left alone? Perhaps. Is the danger that this person that you thought, all of the big danger might be about who you are in the middle of this experience, how you treat yourself.
Mhm.
If this person treats you as less and you sign up for it and now feel like less, right? One of the major keys in psychotherapy is not to confuse how you feel with who you are, right? So because you feel like less doesn't mean don't be confused that you are less, right? This is a crisis moment in your life. It is a dangerous opportunity. Witness the danger, embrace the opportunity.
Absolutely, because trust, I'm a big believer in the fact that trust takes a long time to build, and it can be broken extremely easily. And so for our listener, for all of our listeners to realize that situations like this, her trust in her partner is broken, but she can use it as an opportunity to increase her trust in herself. And
There's no reason for that to be fractured. And here,
yes.
I go to Italy with some frequency, and a couple 2 or 3 years ago I was there, and I fell and I broke a leg, and I was reminded on coming home when dealing with my orthopedic guy that he says, a broken bone heals stronger.
That's
A broken bone heals stronger. So, what will you do in the brokenness of this moment? One, it'll be stronger, and two, uh, cooking is a big part of my life. I have that, and every morning I love to make my wife breakfast, but I have to break eggs. So I have to break something in order to make something, that's a value. So I don't, I'm not trying to be, I don't, it may sound like this is being fairly flip for somebody feeling a tremendous pain in their heart. And I'm not trying to make it flip, but I'm not trying to allow it to escalate into what it isn't. What it isn't. You might have to, and I'd say one of the lines I've thought for many, many years is that all personal transformation requires self-witnessing. That's why all the churches say, I need a witness. Do I have a witness? So this is a time for this woman to witness what she might have done that was part and parcel of this brokenness in her life. Uh, and uh, and but if sometimes I've lived long enough to have times where there are people who have done things where I haven't been able to forgive them.
mhm.
And it wasn't until some years after the experience that I began to realize what I had done that might have been part of that brokenness. And was I willing to be self-forgiving? And until I was willing to be self-forgiving, I couldn't be other forgiving. And strangely enough, when I was self-forgiving, then I could be other forgiving, and everything sort of moved forward. It was over. It was done. I was self-forgiving. I was other, and I think that um, this forgiving business. Let's talk about that maybe for a second. This forgiving business in the process of self-love. There's a Christian theologian who said that uh, forgiving is higher than forgetting because it is forgiving in spite of remembering. Right? So you don't want to forget that this happened to you, but you want to come to a place of forgiving about this. So St. Augustine said that, no saint without a past, no sinner without a future. So we all have to have some of that in our conscience. No saint without a past, no sinner without a future. So this ability not to forget, but to forgive, because to forgive does not mean that you forget, but it is higher yet because it is forgiving in spite of remembering.
Absolutely. And just a few things, Noah. First, it's almost time to wind down. I do have one more question for you, but I want to do a few clarifications for our listeners that I too absolutely believe in the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean we invite someone to do something again. It simply means that we are forgiving that, and we may need to have very strong boundaries about how they are in our lives or not in our lives. The other piece is that, just to clarify for listeners, that when we talk about turning inward to reflect about things you may or may not have done, we are never, and this comes certainly from me, I am never telling people when I ask them to reflect that they caused somebody to betray them, that something they did or didn't do caused a betrayal. And Noah's agreeing with that. I can see it, that we don't want to blame our listener and say, hey, you need to turn in and reflect because you may have caused your partner to betray you. No, no, no. We cannot cause someone to betray us. That is their choice and their choice alone. So then coming back just with one question, Noah, that I hope we have time for, is the part when you said that to our listener about the piece about trust, and you said there's no reason for her to mistrust herself. Here's my question. So many times when I work with people where there's been a betrayal, the person will say, I no longer trust myself. I brought this person into my life. How could I have let a person who is dishonest or a manipulator or a bad, you know, bad human being in certain ways? I don't trust my ability to pick a good partner or to pick healthy people. Could you speak to that part of the trust that gets broken?
I respond to it, and I want to come to it from another direction, if I might.
Yes, please.
Many years, I was a national philosopher for a number of very large companies dealing with addiction and recovery across the country. And one of the issues that people often have is that it's the shaming that's involved with addiction. It's the shaming that keep people from self-witnessing about it. So my response to people, and people, once they feel that they've done something that they may be involved in what and happened, is that they become self-abusive. They start beating themselves up. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. What I did, what I did. I said, there is no strength in self-abuse. It is not about being self-abusive. It is about being self-accountable. So in the circumstance, you have to say, see what happened, be upfront with what happened without beating yourself up about it. If you tell a child that they were a fool for long enough, you will be a prophet, right? That all transformation spiritually is about penance, which is saying it's witnessing, being self-accountable, but not self-abusive. If I could give a gift to people listening to this experience, be self-accountable for this without being self-abusive. Big difference in one's life.
Noah, you captured one of the things I had written down from listening to and watching the film, the self-accountability versus the self-abuse. And I absolutely love that piece and think it's a wonderful note to end on, because it is so critical that being self-accountable, and again, taking it straight to our listener, she can look at her life. She can self-reflect, what you call self-witnessing, I call self-reflection. She can work on that. And then she, instead of saying, I made a mistake, I picked a bad husband, or I picked a bad partner, or someone I shouldn't trust, being able to say, were there red flags? Did I miss anything? If I didn't, then, and just go through that. If I didn't, then there's nothing here. But to be able to look inside, and rather than blaming, because blaming doesn't help us in any way, to blame self, to blame others, what helps us is to require accountability of the self and accountability of others. I'm a big believer in that.
Let me, if I might, I feel that the moment fleeing, a couple of thoughts on leaving, if I might.
Yes.
Of all the things you can make in life, why not make a difference? Make a difference to you, Make a difference together. May you go. May all whoever listening, seeing, witnessing, may you go from strength to strength and be a source of strength to others. Amen.
Noah, thank you. Thank you for blessing us with your wisdom, with your kindness, with your light. And thank you for helping our listener and all of our listeners along the way. It's been such a pleasure and a joy.
Thank you for this moment in my life.
Thank you, Noah.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.